Good afternoon, everybody. I think we'll let Rian first have the first word. He often likes to have the last word, but I'll give him the first word today, just to introduce the topic and obviously just to engage with you as members from a FEDSAS perspective, and then kick off with the main presentation.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session. It's a session jointly hosted by Wealthbit and FEDSAS, but Wealthbit is taking the lead on this one, and we let everyone know that there's a good session going on, and I think we're talking about a very important issue. So Mark will take the discussion further. Glad to see so many faces on the screen, because I think this is a very important issue. Number one, FEDSAS, we believe that your staff is the best asset, the number one asset of a school, and taking care of them in a good way, number one financially, but number two emotionally, and making sure that they spend their finances well is a very important thing. The second one is we're in budget season at school, and we know that at most fee-paying schools, salaries are the highest number on the expense line. And if we can maximize that, if we can support that, if we can ensure that every hour, and I'm not talking about tardy absenteeism, but if every hour at school is worthwhile for someone, then we know that the money we spend as community, as parents at a school, it's so important to get the maximum out of it, not to bleed teachers dry, but to ensure that it's effective and efficient and still fair to them. So for us, taking care of staff is all about making sure that the school runs. So quality education for all, and quality education happens, number one, in a class, number two, with learners, but number three, through a staff member, through a teacher. And that's why we're having this discussion today. So I'm really happy to say that we're in association with Wealthbit, and have been talking with Mark over the past 3-4 years, and I'm very excited about this product that could really empower financial freedom. So Mark, with that, over to you. I'm going to close my screen as well and be a viewer. So enjoy the session, and if there's any question, anyone is welcome to send me an email at rian@fedsas.org.za. Thanks so much. Enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Rian, and thanks for the welcome. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. I know you guys have all got busy school schedules, and particularly making time just before the winter break. I really do appreciate it. I also know we've got a mix of people on this call. So everything from principals to school governing body, people who volunteer their time, teachers, as well as administrative or other staff that might work within the various schools. So I'm conscious we have a really, really wide audience, which I think is great. I'm sure each of you will find some sort of value in this, whether it be for your school or yourselves, and then hopefully it also kind of spurs on further conversations between us. As Rian said, my name is Mark. I'm Marc van Zyl. I'm part of the Wealthbit team, and our mission is really to enable people or empower people to reach some sort of financial freedom, whatever it means for them, so they can focus on what is important for them in their lives. Before joining Wealthbit, I spent many years in various commercial leadership roles, everything from the pharmaceutical industry through to real estate, banking, payments, and other financial services. But I've also played quite a role in various schools. So I've served on the governing body of 2 schools in my time, and I continue to do so today. I'm the finance chair of a school that my children go to, and I can kind of see both sides of the equation. So I do understand the industry a little bit, both from an operation demands of kind of running a school, as well as the people element and the human impact of the financial pressure that people see. So I won't just be talking from a position of theory, I guess, today, because I do have some of the real world experience, although not nearly as much time as many of you have in this. We've obviously been working very closely with FEDSAS over the last few years, and we're here today because we both myself and FEDSAS see the same thing that's happening across the country, and that's that financial stress is showing up not just in business, around the country, but also specifically in schools. It walks into the staff room, it sits in budget meetings or school meetings, staff meetings, etc. And sometimes, even if unintentionally, it finds its way also into the classroom. So this is where over time it obviously wears people down. But there's some good news, right? It doesn't have to be that way. And today is really about shifting that conversation more from the stress angle to support, and what does support look like. So we want to go from kind of just coping and going day to day to building real resilience. And I want to talk about three things today. So firstly, what financial stress looks like in schools, how to start to create a culture of support without adding any additional admin or workload, because it's easy to say, oh, we're going to try to support something, but now all of a sudden it's hard work for someone. And I'll also be sharing some teasers in terms of some of the things that can be done practically that even this evening you can go home and do this evening. So by the end of the session, I hope that you'll walk away with a clear picture of what's possible, and also what the first step might look like for either yourself or your school. So let's get cracking. So really the hidden stress is financial stress, right? And it's everywhere. It's affecting our staff more than what we think in any business scenario. 78% of South Africans experience some sort of financial stress, and nearly everybody in that group also says that it affects their work in some way, shape, or form. Interestingly, from the same survey, this was a Debt Busters or PW and a PwC surveys that we combined, of the same focus group, around 80% of people who said it was affecting their work also said in some way it's affecting their health. But the interesting thing as well is that high earners also, because they have got more access to debt, it also makes them really susceptible to things like high interest payments, kind of payment handcuffs, with almost 3/4 of people's money going towards just paying either a bank or a lender or a credit card company or whatever it might be. So the question really is what does this mean for schools? So obviously, when somebody is financially stressed, we see lower productivity, higher absenteeism, and a greater risk of staff turnover, of course. In fact, kind of financial stress, or the research shows that financial stress leads to actual real losses, so profitability losses in income statements, and makes employees more likely to leave or to disengage. When you added up, the costs for a business of around 100 employees could be as much as 3 million rand a year for that sort of an organization. And the reality is that most of that is actually hidden, because it's already hidden in the payroll. And remember that these are just some of the hard numbers. So what it doesn't capture is some of the emotional toll that this kind of stress might have either on an employee themselves or particularly in the classroom. So what it really means for most employers is kind of reduced productivity, as I said, higher absenteeism and increased turnover. The two stats at the bottom is what we really kind of focus on. Somebody who's under financial stress is absent around 4 days a year more than those that are not under financial stress. And we have this phenomenon called presenteeism, where they're also up to about 27.5 days a year, kind of present, but not really doing their jobs. And it's quite interesting, because when you look at that statistic of the 27.5 days, when I first saw it, I thought, no, that is insane. I mean, 27.5 days, it cannot be true. But the reality, when you break it down, is that 27.5 days works out to be just over 4 hours a week, right? About 4.5 hours a week on a 52-week year. Now, obviously in schools, we've got holiday time and those sorts of things, but I also know that holiday time, just because the kids are on holiday doesn't mean that the staff is on holiday, right? So I know there's a lot of holiday schools or programs that happen during off-peak seasons, which obviously still requires your time. So what we see is that people are under pressure and they show up, but they're not fully present. They're worried, they're distracted, and often they're unsure where to turn to in terms of support. So the ripple effect that we see of this financial stress in schools is that when staff are under financial strain, engagement drops and absenteeism rises, and eventually learners feel it too. Financial stress is quiet, but it is hard, right? So we understand that. When I've spoken to school leaders, I've heard people say things like, I can see that the teachers are stressed. I can see that they're under financial pressure, either because they're coming to me and asking me for lending, or very often people ask how to access their pension funds or whatever the case might be, but they don't necessarily know where to turn. And often people get into these scenarios where there's predatory lending. They might also say that, I know money stress is there, but it's not actually spoken about until it starts affecting something. And by that stage, it's often too late to even really know how to save someone. And the other thing that people say is we lose our best staff, right? So sometimes people, they might get themselves into a financial pickle, or they're under particular financial stress, and they end up either leaving the sector or job hopping between schools. So it's obviously not just about the numbers. We know that people, particularly principals in schools, they want to support their staff better, but often they don't know where to turn. And often schools have got the basics in place. So we've got things in place like pension funds and risk benefits and all those sorts of things, maybe medical aids, or at least access to medical aids. But these don't necessarily account for behavioral blind spots that can be changed, not in an instant, but in a very short space of time. So what we want to do is we want to flip the script almost, right? It's time to really shift from reaction to prevention. And the question really is, what if schools can create a culture of financial strength, which supports the staff in the same way that we look to support learners? And that's really what we're about. And the question in terms of what it kind of takes to do that is, how do we move from stress to support? It's not just about giving people advice that they'd end up not remembering or not implementing in any case. We look to build habits that actually stick. And I've taken this screenshot from a book by the name of James Clear. I think many of you might have heard of Atomic Habits, but it's really around looking at how do we establish habits. Often when people, and I'll talk about budgeting a little bit, but when people talk about budgeting, it's almost seen as like this bad thing of where I'm going to experience some sort of pain. But really, it's about building the right cues, which then lead to a craving of some sort being satisfied, a response to that craving, and then a reward for the right type of a habit. And there's this bit of a feedback loop. So what our program's about is really about creating the right habits, rather than kind of giving one-off advice that people don't end up using anyway. We also want to make sure that we set up a budget that backs up the person's goals and is not just there to take care of their bills and to support bills, which is nonsensical. We want to create a safety net, and we want to give people confidence to make good money decisions, even when life gets hard. So that's what we really focus on, where we look at real practical steps that help to build a bit of resilience for people. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it does take a little bit of time. And that's why it's a journey that we like to go on with people. So I want to spend a few minutes just talking around budgeting. And there's a few practical tools that I want to talk about, but budgeting is the one that I'll start with. Most people think of budgeting that it kind of means cutting joy in some way, shape, or form, whereas we flip that idea on its head. We actually start our process by looking at what really matters to you and what your goals are. Might be life goals, they might be short-term, medium-term, or long-term goals. But once we've established that, we figure out what money is required to go into those sorts of things. We look to then add space for fun and spending and all the kind of the freedom stuff that you might want to do. And then we build a plan that supports your life and not just your bills. So we've got a simple tool as part of our program. And you can see some screenshots of it on the slide at the moment, where we try to build a budget that works for you. And I'll give you a quick snapshot on how to use it. In the illustration, you'll see that you kind of begin by entering your income, and then we look at kind of your after-tax pay and those sorts of things. And then we start looking at and seeing in the green fields, what is it that you want to spend your money on? And there's a whole bunch of different categories that we have there. If you've got a side hustle, we pop in the income for that too. I know in many cases, some educators or teachers might also give extra lessons or do other things as a side hobby. But every rand that you earn gives more powers to choose how you want to live. So what we then do is we then break down the various expenses, and we can then track exactly where things are going. So it's not really about getting perfect. It's not about having every single cent accounted for. It's about starting to get a really good idea how somebody's life is stacking up financially. And as you input those figures, what this tool does is it starts to form a picture of the total spending as well as various ratios that we look at. So, for example, how much of your income are you spending on debt? How much are you spending overall as a percentage of income? And you can therefore get a full picture at a really quick glance. The interesting thing with this, though, is that when I've sat with clients in the past and we've started to pull these pictures together, there's a conversation that I've run through multiple times. The conversation kind of goes like this. Let's say I earn, say, 35,000 Rand a month. After tax, I clear 28 grand. I spend roughly, I don't know, it might be 18,000 odd Rand on my expenses and debt payments and that sort of stuff. And I managed to save 3,000 Rand, part of my pension, and also part into maybe a small savings account every month. And sometimes they stop there and they go, and now I need help. Or they might say, but I have no money at the end of the day. And what we then look at is we then look at the maths. So if I earn 28,000 Rand, I spend 3 grand on savings, and I spend another 18,000 Rand on expenses. The reality there is that I've only accounted for a certain amount, and there's around 7,000 Rand missing. And it's in that the magic happens, because often people forget to take into account, kind of big one-off items that happen, or they don't track, they kind of guess it. And when we can identify where that's going, that's where the magic can happen. So it's more than just budgeting. It's about an individual taking charge of their situation, and your future self will really thank you for it. So what we look at here is we look to implement this without judgment. So this spreadsheet, for example, in our workshops, we actually put the power in your hands, and we give time for someone to complete the workshop and do those sorts of things. But there's no judgment involved, and there's various aspects of the program that kind of comes to it. And the idea is to really help you to get a real picture, because once you have a real picture and you understand what the truth is, that's when you can really do something about it. The second thing that I want to talk to you about is debt strategy. So we've got a tool as well as part of some of the program that we do to really get you to take control of your debt. And I know that a lot of people get into debt, and they often get into debt by accident. They don't realize kind of how they've gone about it. Partly because we're subject to marketing and really, really good salespeople. So the idea behind a lot of what we look at is, whether you're in a situation or not in a situation, how do you manage the debt that you currently have? So what this tool does is it helps you to map out what you owe without any judgment, once again, and also then to look at picking a debt pay down strategy, whether it's a straight line or a snowball method or an avalanche method, and I'll explain those two in a minute or so. And then allows us to build a simple plan with proper timeframes. And you can see the graphic on the screen, how it shows, depending on what methodology we select, we can see how those things will affect our pay down strategy. So we start by listing what we owe, right? That's the first part of what we need to do, whether it's credit cards, loans, car loans, home loans, etc., store accounts. And we don't need to overthink it. We just jot down what we've got there. But really important is we look to understand what is the interest rate we're paying on each of these, and what is the overall amount that each one is that we owe at the moment. And once we pop those two things in, we can, sorry about that, I went to the wrong slide. So once we pop those two things in, then we can actually start taking a look and having a clear idea as to how our debt is structured, what's high interest, what's got really, really big outstanding amounts, etc. So we can then decide, based on our budget, how much maybe extra we want to put in, as well as what sort of strategy we want to talk about. So I'll talk to you quickly about the debt, the two main debt strategies that there are. So the one's called the snowball strategy, and the other one's called an avalanche. So the snowball strategy is kind of what it sounds like. It's something, a snowball rolling down a hill. It starts really, really small, and it gathers steam a lot more. And that snowball becomes really big as we go down the hill. And the way that it works is, once we've listed all of our debts, we pick the smallest debt, whatever the smallest one is. So if I owe 100,000 Rand to bank A and I owe 10,000 Rand to credit card B, we pick credit card B. And we pay the minimum amount to every single other debt, but to that little credit card, or that small amount with the 10,000 Rand, for that one, we really nail that one. We put whatever we can put into that one, and we try and settle it as quickly as possible. We then, once we've done that, we take whatever we were paying to that credit card, and we now move it and start paying it to the next biggest debt, right? And so on and so forth. On the bigger debts, you always just keep to your minimums. But as you then go through the process, those payments snowball until you're out of debt in a meaningful way. The difference between the snowball strategy and the avalanche strategy is that the avalanche strategy, by comparison, selects the debt with the highest interest rate. So it's the one that's costing you the most money, right? Now, sometimes the highest interest rate and the smallest debt might be the same thing, in which case it's a double whammy. But very often, credit cards are really, really expensive. Car loans are a little bit less because they've got security on the vehicle. And then obviously home loans are usually kind of around prime. But very often things like credit cards, personal loans, those sorts of things, particularly store accounts, even though store accounts, they might say it's low interest or no interest, you often find that they miss a payment and all of a sudden these interest penalties do kick in. So what we then look at for the avalanche method is we look to pay down the ones that have got the highest interest rate first. So as you can imagine, the avalanche one, eventually that's kind of like throwing all the snow down the mountain. The big thing with the avalanche one, though, is that over the long term, it ends up costing you less because you'll reduce your fees and your lending fees a little bit quicker. But the snowball one gives you a lot sharper and quicker psychological wins. So depending on the type of personality that you have, and this depends on the strategy that you might want to employ, some people are all about the maths and the logic, and they say, I'm going to pay these things down because it's the most expensive. Others might say, well, actually, no, I want to get the wins. I want to get the endorphin hits, and the wins of really, really bringing something to fruition really, really quickly. So I'm that type of a person. So whenever I've looked at debts, I've really looked at the smallest first, because the minute I settle something, it's a quick win, and then I can focus on the next biggest one, and then that I can settle that a little bit quicker, and so on and so forth. Other people might take a different view on that. So that's really the difference between the two methods. In terms of the tool that we use in our program, you can obviously see how long exactly it'll take you to get to debt-free positions at the current space under both methods. So that's the nice thing, is it can compare both for you. And also you can see how much even like a small extra payment might affect the overall payment strategy. So this is really about strategy, and it's about turning stress into structure. So what we want is for people to kind of finally feel like their money is working for them and not against them. And particularly as you go through this sort of a process, often there's these aha moments where you can look at it and go, actually, I prefer strategy A versus strategy B, just because that suits my personality and it suits my debt profile and those sorts of things. I also want to spend a little bit of time talking about building buffer funds. So I'll share with you a little bit about our financial buffer tool. So this tool helps you prepare for life surprises. So these are things like a car breakdown or sick days or unintended emergencies, your geyser bursts, etc. And there's kind of two safety nets that you'll see in this particular spreadsheet. I'm only going to focus on the emergency fund, but we've got the emergency fund here for oh no moments, like I can't believe that happened, and in the table flip fund, which is kind of for I'm out moments. So I want to concentrate on the emergency fund for today, just because we've got limited time together. But the idea is that we start by entering our average monthly income and understand really what our spending, and we understand how much it is we spend every month on various things. And this thing helps you calculate how much your emergency fund would need to be to really cater for a 3 month, 3 months worth of expenses, or 6 months, or 12 months, etc., etc. And as you would type into the spreadsheet, you can see it kind of instantly updates to see how far along we are, and really to understand how we can build a real resilience in this. So we think of an emergency fund as a cushion for emergencies, and the key to the fund from our perspective is that it must be available but not tempting. So I call it the Saturday night fund, but not because you're going to buy an extra round of drinks for someone on a Saturday night. It's more because if your car breaks down at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night, or at 3 o'clock in the morning your geyser bursts, or whatever the case might be, those funds need to be available in that way. So it mustn't be, an emergency fund is no good to you if you need to call a broker and he's only open on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and then you're going to have to get the money out or anything like that. So people often ask me, well, where do I put my emergency fund? And the simplest thing is many banks have got, with a check account or whatever the case you might have, you've got a little savings pocket. And I would open up a savings pocket and say, right, I'd rename it to the words emergency fund with a number. So if you're starting out and you want to know, well, what should my emergency fund be? I don't have 3 months worth of expenses that I can just quickly dump into an emergency fund. Call it emergency fund 10,000 Rand. Or if 10,000 Rand is too much for you, call it emergency fund 5,000 Rand. And if 5,000 Rand is too steep, then it's emergency fund 2,000 Rand. It doesn't matter really what the number is, as long as you get into the habit of saving that amount each month. Also, don't worry necessarily about the interest rates, right? The interest rate is great, but the reality is that this is a fund that's there for emergencies. It's not there to earn you money, okay? You want to have it there so it can take care of any emergency that you might have, and you need it at short notice. So that's kind of the main bits around that. Now, obviously, as that fund grows, let's say you do get it to 10,000 Rand, and let's say that a burst geyser is not going to cost you more than say 10,000 Rand on that evening, but let's say now you end up with 2 or 3 months worth of your expenses in an emergency fund. For that excess, let's say over 10 grand, that is what you would then, of course, put into a proper emergency fund, because the odds are that your geyser is never going to cost you 3 months worth of expenses in one night. So that's for the rest of the emergency fund. Now you can start worrying about returns on that, but it must still be available. You mustn't. It's not there for a 6 month fixed deposit, for example, right? Because it's there in case of an emergency. So the idea is to really look at your monthly savings goal. How much can you afford to comfortably set aside? And this tool would help you to see how many months it's going to take you to reach your milestone and what you're looking to do. So that's really what this is about. It's about choice, and it's not about stress. It's not about panic. It's about the freedom to breathe, reset, make some smart decisions, and do things on your own terms. So no matter where you're starting from, progress is actually progress, right? And every rand saved here is an act of self-respect towards yourself. So why does this all matter? The reality is that we engage with our money on a daily basis, whether it's spending daily or what we might be doing on a monthly basis or even annually. We're reliant on a system. And if we don't have a system, we end up freaking out and we make panic decisions, or we end up making decisions based on guesses rather than reality. And we end up reacting instead of planning. So we guess instead of knowing, and that is why this kind of support really, really matters. It's not just about money, it's about the mental load that it takes off of you. I was invited to quite an expensive dinner the other night, and James Clear also has another saying where he says, a yes is a commitment of your time for the future, and a no is a saving of your time for the future. And I often look at that, and when I was invited to this dinner, I think it was like, I don't know what it was maybe 1,000 Rand a head to go to this dinner. And I looked at my wife and I said, please say no. Because there's two things. Number one, it's a future commitment. I'll be reacting to this fancy dinner or whatever it might be. But on the flip side, it's also a commitment now that I now know that if I say yes, we will be spending that kind of money on a dinner. And if we really want to spend time with our friends, we can spend time with them in a much more economical way than that. So it's about taking some of the mental load off of you as well, a bit of self-worth and of course, peace of mind. And when schools can help staff build some of these skills, then the benefits really can show up everywhere. So I want to tell you a little bit about our financial freedom program and how we pull all of these things together. So it's really a complete financial well-being solution, which is tailored for schools. And it includes a number of items. So firstly, a number of short impactful workshops. We run one a month at least. And we run, I think Ari told me that this week he's got 12 sessions booked for this week, for example. And these range across all sorts of different topics. And I'll show you that in a second. We also do one-on-one coaching for staff that need extra support. And this is coaching. It's not financial advice, it's coaching. And I'll explain to you what the difference is now. And we also have a mobile app, which keeps the momentum going, and various dashboards, both for you as an individual, as well as for leadership, that can help track usage and impact. So it's really simple to roll out, and it's designed to work for schools of all sizes. And it's built also with empathy and not pressure. So I've always found that when you try and force somebody into a program where they have to discuss or think about their finances, very often you get a lot of resistance. Whereas the reality is that if people are engaged in a program and they can see the benefit for themselves, then they are very often really, really keen to participate, and we see absolutely massive traction. Just in terms of workshops, so they're really short, they're focused, they're not more than 45 minutes each, and they're all delivered virtually. So you don't have to travel anywhere. Each one tackles a specific area. So whether it's budgeting or saving or how to talk to your spouse, money and relationships, asset allocation, all those sorts of things, it gives staff tools that they can use right away. They can go home and discuss it with their spouse or with their with whoever their significant people are in their lives directly afterwards. They're designed to be practical and inclusive, and to really give people hope in terms of how they can manage their finances. The other thing that we have is a mobile app, and in terms of the mobile app, it gives each staff member their own personal financial hub. So it tracks progress, it offers various tools and rewards positive behavior, and it keeps people moving forward. It's quite a smart piece of kit. It's plugged into AI, which means that it can actually provide insights based on your plan and based on the numbers that are in your physical situation, which is really powerful. So you can ask the questions like, what is my net worth? Or if I wanted to be earning, I'm going to make it up now, 50,000 Rand a month when I retire, and based on my plan today, how much should I start saving and what does that look like? It also has various learning modules in there, which can take you through almost like coursework. And because I'm talking to educators, I know educators enjoy tests, there's also items in there where it actually asks you questions just to make sure that learning is really, really cemented in. It is gamified, but it's grounded in real principles, and it's completely private. So your information is your information. We've currently got around 16,000 people using Wealthbit around the country, and also some internationally. We undergo really, really rigorous IT tests, penetration tests, and cybersecurity tests on a regular basis. So all the data is really secure, and the employers don't have any sight of this sort of data whatsoever. What we do with employers is that we do give them access to what we call an anonymized usage dashboard. And what this does is it helps people to see how many staff are actually engaging and where they're focusing, as well as what kind of support is being used, and also tries to highlight what kind of support is needed. It's helpful data that kind of shows impact without adding administration to the management team or the leadership team. So that's just a little bit of insight around that. And the good news is we're already helping other schools make a difference. We've rolled it out to a number of schools, and the feedback is really, really impressive. The messaging that we've gotten back is that staff feel seen. I got a message from a head of an SGB a couple of months ago that we rolled out to, and they got a special kind of approach from a staff member saying, we can't believe how much you as a school is actually supporting us, and really thank you for that. So they feel seen, they feel supported. And what's happening in school leadership is also seeing a difference as well, right? They're seeing kind of a little uptick in morale, a little bit of a spring in step for those schools where they're doing well and they're going on the journey. It becomes really, really a meaningful part of your value proposition to staff. Often various businesses that I deal with, they talk about wanting to be an employer of choice. And I was talking to an IT business the other day, and they said, 3 years ago, free coffee and bean bags and foosball tables, that was really effective at retaining staff. Those are kind of health factors now, and if you don't have a foosball table, they won't even work in the store, in the door, or those kind of beanbag rooms or whatever it is. And they kind of said this tongue in cheek, of course, but they said, we're all looking for things that can really attract and retain top talent. So that's that. The great news is that we receive 4 and 5 star reviews for our coaching sessions, our workshops. The content is of a really, really high quality, and there's a lot of innovation that comes from the feedback that we get from schools. And we also iterate our program really, really quickly. So if we see that something can be improved, we will add something in, and it doesn't take us a long time to do so. One of our coaches was recently at a reunion, his own school reunion. It was his 20th high school reunion. and he met up with one of his old teachers. And that teacher, in terms of what he said to our coach, he said, and to be fair, this school's not on our program yet, but he said, I've just retired, but I actually can't afford to retire. And I wish that somebody had kind of told me it was going to be this way. And I wish I'd had a bit of a heads up. And the reality is, through this program, we are giving people that heads up. So, we believe it's not too late to even help that gentleman. There's still things that we can do to help him in his course. But the reality is that how many more people are going through the same reality as him. I'm going to talk a little bit now about a financial stress survey that we do. And I want to give you an opportunity to think about this for your school. So in a moment, I'll share a QR code. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to generate a quick survey for your school. But I'll take you through what's on the screen at the moment is actually some really cool insights that we've received from a particular business that we're busy working with at the moment, where the survey effectively asks an individual about 7 or 8 questions, and they answer those. And there's specific themes and specific ways in which those questions are phrased. And it then gives us a report that I think is about, 12 or 15 different measures on the report, which really looks to see how they are, how they're thinking about financial stresses as a conglomerate of staff in that business. So in this case, you can see lots of people are saying that financial stress worries them while they're doing their work. A large proportion also think about looking for other jobs or are actually doing so. And in this case, 90% have considered a second job, and 17% have already gone out and gotten one in some way, shape, or form, or a side hustle or whatever, just to deal with financial stress. So this is a great gauge and a great tool for you to kind of see how much of a problem is this in my school, right? So the way that it works is that on the next page, you can scan a QR code. You can just use your phone to do it, and it'll take you to one of our pages. If you then input a few details about yourself and your school, so almost like you as the control person, it'll then generate a unique survey for your school. And then all you have to do is send an email with that link to the staff of the school, asking them to participate in the survey. And as I said, it's about 7 questions. It's 100% anonymous. They're not asked for any of their personal details. The only reason why we ask for your details is so we know who to refer it back to, and then we can link that code into your specific school. So each person who scans it will get a different code, which will then allow us to track the results for your particular school. And then we can tell you those insights. So as soon as enough people have completed the survey, we can share the insights, and then we can formulate a plan for your school, as the case might be. So this is the code. So I know how many people are on the call, so I'm watching to see how many people scan the code. Please do, if you're a principal or an SGB member, or alternatively a bursar, please do scan it. If you're a teacher and your principal might not be in the meeting, then obviously please take a photo of the screen and ask them to send out the survey. In the event that you want the content of the email that you would send out with the survey, you'll see my email address is at the bottom there, marc@wealthbit.co, and I'll just pop me an email, and I'll happily even send you the wording for the email that goes with it. So you don't have to do any thinking yourself. Really, really happy to help you with regards to that. Sorry, I did actually forget to mention right at the top of the session. If there are any questions about anything that I've said, we've got a chat. So if you want to pop any questions into the chat, then I'm happy to answer them and go through any specific details with you. And then my second last slide is, if you would like to talk about the financial freedom or find out a little bit more about it and how it can help your school, you can scan this QR code. So it's a different one to the last one. And there's a no obligation 30-minute conversation that we will have. We can do it either online or in person, depending on where we are around the country. And we can see how we can help your school specifically. So it'll either be myself or my colleague, Alex. We're really, really passionate about what we do. And we're really keen to help as many South Africans as possible. So please scan this QR code, and then we can arrange something at a time that's convenient to you. It'll take you through to a Calendly booking link, and we can make sure that we can see each other. I know you're about to go on holidays as well, so even if you want to book a month in advance, it's not a problem. My email address is also on the previous slide, mark@wealthbit.co, and we're happy to meet you wherever you need to be met. I see also Jamie's putting some stuff into the chat, so that's also there. And that is all the slides that I wanted to present today. So I'd like you just to thank you for investing your time with us today, and a special thanks to the FEDSAS team and Rian and his team for making this possible. After the session, you're each going to receive a bit of a special gift from us. I'm going to send you those spreadsheets that I was worrying through a little bit earlier over the next 24 hours. And you're more than welcome to go play around in them. If you've got any questions, please give me a shout. I really don't mind. We'll be sharing the recording as well with Rian and his team, so that can be available to their membership as is appropriate, and we can then go from there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now for a second, and then I'll be open up to questions. Thank you. Rian, I don't know if you want to, I know I said I wasn't going to give you some closing words, but I'm happy to.
No, enjoyed the session. Just wanted to let everyone know that, yeah, there will be recording and they can contact us. We'll highly likely be posting it on our FEDSAS Facebook page for the Center of Finance and Risk Management, the Fin Talks. So you can find the information there and refer colleagues there. But no, very informative session. I don't know if there's questions from the audience, but thanks so much for supporting our teachers. There's a hand raised. I don't know if it's
I saw a question in the chat, or I don't know how to get to the questions. So I don't know, Jamie, you can maybe read the questions to us as well, or I don't know how we deal with hands raised. I don't know if you can turn the person's mic on.
Okay, the question that came in was, how does the costing work? Do the teachers pay or does the school pay?
So the way that it works is we contract with the school. So we'll talk to the school, and there's the school would effectively pay for the program. The costing is not high. We've tried to keep it as low as possible. It's effectively paid on a per person basis. We do need a minimum of 25 participants, because obviously I can't provide reporting for 2 people, because then it's not so anonymous. So we do need a minimum of 25. But if the school's got 100 staff, we can deal with 100 staff. If they've got 200 staff, they can deal with 200. If they've only got 30 staff, that's cool, not a problem either. And it doesn't really matter to us whether it's SGB staff or GDE or whatever the right provincial one is. So we can cater for everybody. In terms of the costing, it depends on the package that is chosen and the number of people. And also there's like some discounts that we give if some schools like to pay up front, some schools want to pay monthly, so that we can deal with the school depending on their appropriate needs. But the whole idea about this is that it's the employer that provides the benefit for their teachers, because as Rian said, those teachers are, and well, not just teachers, but teachers, admin staff, etc., they're making up roughly 70% of the school's costs, and we need to figure out a way to take care of them in the right way. The other thing, the other thing, just in terms of the charge, is what it also guarantees is that there is no product sales to the people that are busy engaging in the program. Right? I'm aware of some of the big insurance companies or whatever the case might be. They will come in and say, hey, we can do some sort of a program. They often don't have the coaching or whatever the case might be, but they can do something. But very often what that turns into is that they try and sell funeral policies or life insurance or whatever the case might be. And this is not based on that. This is an educational and coaching program. It's not trying to sell financial products to somebody. Hopefully that answers the question. Jamie, I don't know if there's another question. I can see them popping up, but I can't read them quick enough.
There's another one here. It says, is the mobile app free, and am I able to download it without joining the program?
So you can download it, but unfortunately at the moment you have to be on the program in order to utilize the app. So it's linked to a registered email address for the program. We will hopefully in time, although we're still a little bit away, have also a consumer version, but the pricing will of course be different, etc., because of volumes and those sorts of things. So at the moment it's only available to people who are part of a program with their respective employers.
Okay, another one just came in now. What if my wife handles all our finances? Would I still have to participate in this program?
Well, you don't have to do anything, right? So yeah, I mean, look, the I guess it links into something else as well. So if your wife handles, or your spouse or husband, or whatever the case might be, handles all the finances, that's fine. It's not a problem. What I would encourage, though, is that if it is knowledge that you can get, and particularly knowledge that would help your finances as a team in the home, let's say, or even if it's just to educate yourself, so you can also help to spot blind spots in those finances, I would certainly encourage you to participate. Yeah, I get maybe some of the numbers might not be 100% accurate, or whatever the case might be that you input for things like budget or whatever the case is. But you can also sit down with your staff and say, hey, look, let's put this in, and let's see how we deal with this together. It brings me on to like another kind of point, which if you'll indulge me, I'd like to raise. I was sitting with a CFO. Well, he was actually the CEO of the business, but he's a chartered accountant, and he said to me, well, Mark, this is all cool, and I can see that it will help my staff, my junior staff and my mid-level staff, but I'm a CEO and I'm a CA, so I've got this great spreadsheet, and my spreadsheet works beautifully for me. And I kind of said, yeah, that's cool, I understand all that sort of stuff, and continue the meeting. And as we were busy packing up, we were talking about emergency funds, funnily enough. And he said, oh, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm banked with Bank A, but I've got a credit card with Bank B because I like their point system and the rewards that I get with it. But that credit card allows me an extra savings pocket, or whatever you want to call it. And in that savings pocket, what I do is I put money away every month, and then I know I've got professional membership fees that I need to pay once a year, and I use that to fund those membership fees, so I never have to go into a credit card debt for those membership fees. And they're quite significant. They're expensive. For whatever reason, I belong to some quite expensive associations. And he looked at me and he kind of went, oh, so hold on a second. So you actually do what you tell people to do? And I said, well, of course I do what I tell people to. And I've got a great relationship with him. So I was able to kind of tongue in cheek say to him, but you got a cool spreadsheet. And for him, the penny dropped, and he said, actually, my blind spot is not knowing the maths, not knowing the maths and all those sort of things. My blind spot is the fact that I don't take action. And I said, exactly. I said, I don't know any professional sports person who's any success in life, in terms of their professional lives, who doesn't have some sort of a coach somewhere looking out for them. And yeah, luckily they've decided to go with us as well. So, it's not just about, you use this, finances in any home as a team sport, right? If it's not, then it becomes really difficult. I see we've got a hand from Johan Freyler, but I'm not too sure.
I'm going to try and allow him to speak. Let me just try this.
Johan, if we can't do your mic, because there might be some settings on the meeting, then please feel free to put your comment in the Q&A or in the chat. But Jamie will try and help you. I saw another hand earlier. I don't know who it was though.
No, there's just one hand for now. Let me just check the Q&A again. If there's anything new that's come in.
Let me try and see if I can. No, all it's allowing me to do is lower his hand. I think, Johan, we've got a setting on the meeting that only allows kind of presenters to speak. And I don't know how to make you a presenter. So I'm going to try my best. There's one come in. I don't know if this is your question. I see it was, what if I already have a financial advisor? Do I still need the program? So yes and no, right? So we don't advocate to force anybody to do the program. And this is not a financial advice program, right? This is not about trying to sell anybody any kind of products or anything along those lines. So when we do the program effectively comes up with a plan for you, whatever that plan for your financial life might look like. And what we then do is we then say that you can go and implement this plan in one of three ways. So the first way is that you can go and do it by yourself, right? You can self-implement. So you can go figure out your own emergency fund. You can figure out certain, whatever investments you want to make, how to get out of debt. You can do all of those things with the information that you have garnered from the program. So that's option number one. Option number two is if you have a financial advisor, take the plan to your financial advisor and say, listen, I know that we've spoken to each other about investments, we've spoken to each other about life insurances or whatever the case might be, but I've got this really cool financial plan. Can you help me implement it? And when it gets to investing in this sort of a way, I want you to implement it for me, and I want you to give me your advice on that. So we're not Wealthbit is not a financial advice firm. We're a technology business that deals in education, coaching, and the tech side of things. And of course, the third option is if you really don't have somebody, so you don't want to self-implement, you're not confident enough to do so, and you don't have a financial advisor, or you don't think that your financial advisor will be suitable for that particular plan, then of course we can recommend somebody to help you with that. But that it's not a hard sell in any way, shape, or form. We literally want your plan to be implemented. Our North Star is about getting people into the space where they are empowered towards whatever financial freedom means for them. We're not there to try and sell something and make basis points on, commissions on whatever products they end up buying. I don't know if we've been successful with Johan.
Not sure if that was his question. Maybe can I just add to that financial advisor question, because I think many people do have a financial advisor, and Mark, maybe you can just give me some indication. Financial advisors do not work for free. So it's always, what do we pay for this product? Because my financial advisor, your financial advisor, and rightly so, gets a fee based on the products that is sold to you to make it sustainable. But there's always a fee in the process. But you probably see your financial advisor once a year, once in 6 months maybe, and ensure that everything is still according to plan. But what this program does, it's the empowerment in your own space, but it also creates the discipline. Not just have the spreadsheet, but live the spreadsheet. And that's a slight difference for me. Your financial advisor has good advice, but for many people, this is where you become your own advisor and work your own plan, in a sense, if I read this correctly. Am I right?
Well, yeah, yes and no. So to the extent that you only kind of attend the workshops and use the tech, the principles are sound and they will teach you things to do, right? To the extent that you have a coach, that coach will push you to do the things that you need to do, like any good coach would do. I mean, if I've got a personal trainer and I don't show up to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call, and usually I have to do extra push-ups as punishment for not showing up on time, right? So the coach is really there from an accountability perspective, but the tech can also, aid in that accountability side of things. So it's not about trying to make you a guru and to understand, now all of a sudden you're going to understand every single unit trust fund in the country and recommend this versus that versus the other, right? That's not the point of it. It's to instill a lot of the principles that you're going to need. The financial advisor still has their place in terms of giving you access to some of the funds that you might need to invest in, giving you access to certain tools, et cetera. Life insurances, they can often go and, they've got broker codes with, whichever life insurers or whichever investment business they have. And very often they can go and broker the right deal for you, which you might not be able to do yourself as an individual, right? So advisors have their place, absolutely. But equally, coaching and education has its place. I always say to people, people say, I want a better advisor. What advisors love is better customers, right? So people who are more educated, more well-informed, that can ask more challenging questions. And it also means that if you've got an advisor that's not giving the right advice, you can quickly tell, very, very quickly. And you won't be like a deer in the headlights when they run things at you. I met with a client the other day, and they were telling me about their advisor and kind of the advice that they got. And I said, so do you agree with their advice? So he said, well, it sounded good at the time, but now that I look at it, I'm not too sure why it sounded good. And I said, okay, well, let's unpack it a little bit, right? And to be fair, in that case, the advisor's advice was good advice. It wasn't bad advice. But at least the person had a base understanding of it now rather than anything else. I see Renelle has posted a question or asked a question.
Yeah, Ronel's question is, what does the program cost per month?
So it ranges from 49 Rand a month to 129 Rand a month. So 129 Rand a month is obviously the top end package. And that is per person that's participating. That includes the coaching, it includes the workshops, it includes the technology, it includes all the different workbooks from all the various sessions. It includes the educational content. It includes, I don't know, kind of everything but the kitchen sink, I think. The 49 Rand one is more of the tech-based one. And then there's a tier in the middle, which is around 79 Rand a month. And that is that includes the workshops, but not necessarily the coaching. And obviously schools can choose whichever they feel is most appropriate for their staff. And I think we're almost at time. I'm surprised that we went on for so long with some of the questions, but I'm glad that there was great interaction. I do appreciate it.
A lot of thank yous, and from my side, not the last word, but just thank you for sharing this with the FEDSAS family and the FEDSAS community. And we're hoping to hear from everyone. There's a lot of applause on the screen. So thank you so much,
really
Mark. Your last word.
No, thank you very much. I think thank you to everybody for investing the time, and it really is an investment. My email address again is mark@wealthbit.co, and it's Mark with a C. My parents couldn't afford the extra line for the K when I was born, so it's mark@wealthbit.co, not .co.za, it's just .co. Please do send me an email. I can't wait to hear from you. Really happy to set up a chat, and hopefully we can see how we can use the tools that I shared today and many, many more to really empower your staff, and let's make a difference for South Africa. Thank you.